The Guardians, Path of Ascension, by Bruce R.F. Chapter 10, Area 52. Ear, ear, ear. The sirens blare as an emergency distress signal is triggered. Sergeant Danow and Private Clater are the first to respond, deployed from Siegel Army Base, just a few clicks north of the adjacent, yet unmarked, research building, hidden deep within the Peruvian jungle, in an area known only as Sector 5-75. Cutting around the embankment, Sergeant Danow nearly rolls the jeep as he flies around the sharp bend, handling the slippery ground like a redneck out mudding. He's eager to get there, wanting to waste no time. The distress signal was received only 4 minutes ago, at 0700 hours. The 10-minute drive is nearly complete, but the woods seem thicker today, which is holding up progress. Danow flips a switch to ease their trek, and with the cutting rails in place on the bumper, they manage to push through the unusually thick underbrush in relatively short time. Coming up on the primary entrance, the jeep stalls as they hit a pocket of tall grass at the base of the valley, where the facility is buried deep within the mountain and extends some 24 floors beneath the surface. The grass tangles in the wheels, stalling the drivetrain and rooting the vehicle in its tracks. "Jesus, Sarge, look at the grass!" exclaims the private as he stares bewilderedly at the overgrowth that covers the building's entrance, embedded into the mountainside. "What about it?" he questions, almost arrogantly, while hopping out of the jeep. "Well, look at it. It's overgrown. Come to think of it, it's all overgrown. Everything. It wasn't like this yesterday," Clater points out. "Private, we're in a jungle. Everything grows fast around here," Danow dismisses. "Now grab your gear and move your ass. We got people in there," he yells like a drill instructor. Wading through the freakishly tall grass, they hack and slice at the bits that entangle them as they pass by. "Man," Private Clater lets out, feeling a sense of eeriness creeping in. "I don't like this, Sarge." Danow just shrugs, offering a rebuttal. "What's to like about it? We're here to do a job, and that's what we're gonna do," he states, as they come up on the double-layered, 4-inch thick, steel compound doors, mired in rust and foliage. Private Clater lets out a heavy breath, examining the corrosion levels on the door. "It's severely oxidized." The sergeant shakes his head, letting out a lofty sigh of his own. "Clater, you have a keen eye for the obvious," he comments. "Sir, I'm telling you, it wasn't like this yesterday. Something's wrong here," he states. "Well, no shit, that's why we're here," says Sergeant Danow, who operates the key panel to the right of the door. Shriek! Sounds the metallic layers as they grind past one another before stopping halfway open. Clater and Danow can see the second layer of doors through the parting of the first. Immediately, Clater grabs the edge of the outer layer in an attempt to budge it. "Shit!" he exclaims, jumping back and peeling his gloves off. "It's harder than a son of a bitch!" Danow shoves him aside. "Quick, grab your pry bar," he instructs his subordinate. Clink, clink. They force the wedge of the bars into the lip of the door. Standing beside it as a shield, they heave hard left. "Pull, pull, pull!" the sergeant grunts. It's stuck good, and it hurts their hands as they strain, pulling against the friction, the heat, and the binding rust. It budges a little, then, boom! Looking up from the dirt, Sergeant Danow gasps, regaining his wind and catching sight of the door that is planted just inches in front of his face. Quickly he snaps left, then hops to his feet, rushing over to his downed subordinate. Private, you alive?" He tugs at him, rolling him over before slapping his face. Clater gasps, coming to. "What the hell happened?" he asks the sergeant. "Backdraft," says the sergeant, as he helps him to his feet. The private then snaps, hearing a loud rumble. "Look at that!" he points. The mouth of the cave begins to fold, as part of the mountain crumbles inward. Moving close, the soldiers watch their step, staying clear of the falling debris. "Sarge, what are you doing?" Clater questions. "I'm going in," he replies. "You can't, it's unsteady." Immediately, Danow grabs him by the shoulder. "Look, we have people in there. Now if you follow my lead to stay frosty, you got nothing to worry about," Danow barks, before stepping in and climbing over the rubble. "How do you know anyone's still alive in here?" Clater questions. "I don't, but if you were stuck in this hole, wouldn't you want someone to come dig your ass out? Now move it." It's hot in there. The air is dank with a musty smell, and the fire doesn't make it any more tolerable. All the computers have nearly been crushed from the collapse, while those that didn't get pummeled have been burned into puddles of melted plastic. Surprisingly, however, the plants are fine. The innards of the tunnel, though crafted with concrete, tile, and other man-made materials, are lined with thick vines, flowers, and other forms of vegetation that appear to be thriving despite the heat. Clater glances upward at the natural skylight, formed in the center of the ceiling, where pipes and other debris have fallen through. Even with the power off, they can still see with the aid of the light from the flames, and the bits of sun that get through the gap in the ceiling. At the end of the tunnel lies a decontamination room and a single elevator shaft, which appears to be intact. Attempting to operate the console, Danow shouts, "Shit, it's dead." "Well, why don't we take the stairs?" Clater rebuts. "Private, this is a biological research facility. It was designed to be self-contained in the event of a catastrophic failure, to prevent possible outside contamination. In other words, there are no stairs leading in or out. The private's eyes grow wide. Then why the hell are you trying to get inside? The whole place could be toxic. The signal we received was code yellow, for help. Code red is biological. Now we need to get this elevator working, states the sergeant, as he removes the access panel. What are you doing? I may be able to tap into the emergency generators and get the elevators operational. Here, give me a hand, he instructs, and it isn't long before the lights kick on. Soon after, they step into the cylinder-shaped conveyance and begin their descent. It's getting warmer, Clater says, with his muffled voice resonating through the mask of his rebreather. The sergeant only nods, expecting the worst from what awaits them. His gut tells him the lack of communication likely means no survivors, but people could be buried alive, with no way to call for help. A little over a minute is all it takes to descend the 24 floors to the heart of the research building. Private Clater and Sergeant Denow double-check their equipment before proceeding. As the door to the elevator slides open, the soldiers take in the eyeful of their subterranean surroundings. It's a jungle down there, literally, with heat, humidity, and an abundance of local, or perhaps not-so-local plant life. Though the power is on, the majority of the lights are out, with the hall being lit by patches of fire here and there. Move out, Denow instructs, motioning with a hand before moving forward. Clater falls behind, staying back and watching the flanks. The hall ahead is charred, yet covered in the same creepy vines as above. Farther ahead is a storage room, while directly to their left and center of the hall are the researchers' barracks, which are the first on their list of places to check. Easing the door of the women's quarters open, there's a thump at the floor, a shoe. It's a penny loafer, wrapped in vines, that trail outward from the white sock of the decaying scientist, lying in the corner. Her expression is horrifying, with wide eyes and a gaping mouth hidden behind clutched hands, still poised in a death grip that grasps the leafy things that have encased her. Her flesh appears dry and leathery, shriveled like a mummy. What's worse, she's not the only one. There are corpses everywhere, pinned to the floor, ceiling, and walls. Some of them were taken while occupying the bathroom, while others never left their beds. The men's barracks are much the same, with no survivors in sight. What the hell happened here? Denow questions, but Clater has no answer. They back away, cautiously watching their steps. Their eyes track left, then right, for signs of movement as they turn about. Their anxiety levels have risen now, after seeing humans turned into scarecrows. Clater feels it the worst, for he's not as seasoned as his leader. The only combat he's seen has been in simulation, but that was with people, an enemy he can try to understand. Whatever is going on here is beyond him. Although, in truth, Denow isn't faring much better, but he works to suppress his angst, to keep his lackey cool. This underground jungle is thick, much like the outdoors, with foliage clinging to the walls, filling the halls, and hanging from the overhead piping, electrical, and ductwork. Across the hall is another decontamination chamber, which leads into the labs. According to the map on the wall, laboratories A, B, and C lie just beyond the chamber. Sergeant Denow gestures with a hand, signaling to move forward, cautiously brushing the pothos and bromeliads aside as they make their way down the corridor and up the ramp to the corrugated floor to the chamber. Denow takes note of the water running beneath the centrally placed floor grates. He pauses, signaling to his partner to wait. There's a sound of rushing water, like rain, pouring from just ahead, and the chamber door is cracked open. Easing it farther, Sergeant Denow pushes with the barrel of his rifle, while peering through the narrow gap. "Oh, God, no! Denow, it's got me!" cries Clater, who flails frantically, tugging against his captor. The desperate howls of his partner chills Denow's heart, and he swings about, catching an eyeful of the unexpected. "Jesus, Clater, were you born in the land of dirt? You nearly gave me a heart attack. Do you know that, Private?" barks the sergeant, who is secretly relieved that it's nothing serious, as he steps up to untangle him from the clingers. "Come on, Sarge, this shit's biting me!" he exclaims, pointing and pulling against a green, bulbous leaflet, folded like a clamshell and clamped to his arm. "Get it off, will ya?" Clater whines. "Hold your arm steady, Private," Denow instructs, as he slips his fingers just under the leafy lip to help pry the mouth of the thing open. It tears like Velcro from Clater's jacket as the thorny teeth peel away. "Man, this thing's got a grip," says the sergeant, now prying with both hands. "Gah!" grunts the private as his arm is freed. The sudden release causes him to stagger forward just a bit, and Denow pulls him aside. Snap! Clap! Clap! The mouth of the bulb opens and closes in a biting motion. "What the hell is that thing?" Clater asks. "Some sort of fly trap," Denow states, "though I've never seen one that big before. How's your arm?" "Sore," Clater replies, rubbing it. "Come on, Private, and watch yourself. We're no good to anybody if we get ourselves killed," he tells him, before easing his way through the door of the decontamination chamber. The room is rather expansive for what it is, 12 meters long, by 8 meters wide, and 10 meters from ceiling to floor, with a centralized, grated bridge that connects the two entrances. The ceiling is lined with scaffolding-like framework to support the lights and the sprinkler system, while below the bridge is a processing station used for sterilizing large bits of equipment that come through. Stairs on either side of the bridge, mirrored at both ends, run to the bottom level, which is flooded with water that narrowly reaches the base of the doors at the upper level. Aquatic plant life fill the basin, while mold, algae, and mildew have accumulated on the walls. The overhead sprinklers are still going, and have ruined the computers of the control station, positioned at a circular junction point in the middle of the bridge. And much like everywhere else, the vast majority of the overhead lights are out. There isn't a trace of fire in here, it's simply too wet. As the two soldiers slosh ahead, they examine the layout, while thoroughly inspecting the equipment and the bodies of the two scientists who once operated the controls. One is slumped over her console to the left, with vines growing out of her face, while the other is rooted to his chair to the right, with a large flower-like thing protruding from his chest. The two men move on, for there is no one left alive in here. Coming down the ramp from the decontamination area, they stop at a T-junction, when Clater catches a glimpse of something straight ahead, and through the glass door of Laboratory B. "Look at that!" He points at the 15-foot-tall rose, which stands firmly, with its roots extending outward in all directions, and some pressing through the very structure of the building. Its bulb is closed, as if it were asleep. The two men can barely believe their eyes. Could this be it, the source of all the madness? They wonder, as they ease themselves closer to peer through the glass of the horribly wrecked laboratory. Little cotton ball-like things powder the floor, surrounding the enormous plant. "Careful!" they both hear, as images of danger pop into their minds. "Did you hear that?" Danao turns to him. "Yeah," he says, before hearing something else. It's faint, gurgling, but definitely there. "Help!" There it is again. The two of them face to the right, seeing movement. "Hold on, we'll be right there!" Clater rushes over before Danao can say anything to stop him, for out of the corner of his eye, the rose is budding, spewing spores. "It's awake!" The voice echoes within their minds. Danao readies his weapon, looking for where it came from. Clater shakes his head, pushing out the foreign presence as he kneels to the woman on the floor, just outside of Laboratory C. He grabs her shoulder, still hearing the pleas for help, and as she rolls over, her eyes open, lacking anything human. "Clater, watch smash!" A root crashes through the door, latching on to Sergeant Danao, who turns quickly and opens fire. "Rat-a-tat-tat!" Danao cries out, as his life force is drained, and he shrivels like the rest. "Sarge!" Clater swings his rifle and fires at the greenish-brown, rope-like strand. "Chomp!" "Ah!" The woman latches onto Clater's back. She bites into him as her fingers lace around, splitting into vines that protrude into his flesh. Thrashing harshly, he grabs back, then turns, ramming her into the wall, knocking her free. She looks human, all the way down to her tan, lush nipples, but she's not. The black things for her eyes, the spines for her teeth, and the razor-sharp thorns for her claws give her away. Looking down at the piece of her blouse that had torn in the scuffle, a sense of fear overtakes him when he sees it's nothing but leaves, that dull in luster, from the white of the fabric to a viney brown. Clater then proceeds to do what any rational human would in that moment. He opens fire, blasting bits of her away, which decamouflage as the leafy layers tear from her body. The creature shrieks and shrills as it flails from the bullets ripping through, tearing her down to the vines that fashion her skeleton. She drops back, huddling in the corner. The onslaught continues furiously, blowing more and more of her away, until, click! "Shit!" Clater exclaims. The creature stands, regrowing its leaves, and recoloring its disguise. Private Clater can't believe his eyes, for it's back to perfect human form. Daintily she walks forward, popping her hips femininely, as if to work off the laws of attraction. It even emits pheromones that are so cleverly deceiving. If he hadn't already seen the truth with his own eyes, he'd be convinced. As she gets closer, he works frantically to find another magazine. "Come on, where is it?" he shouts, searching himself, when suddenly there's a loud crash, and from out of the corner of Laboratory C rushes another beast. It's over 8 feet tall, tan in color, and insect-like. It nabs the girl right away, and the two of them square off. Clater turns back, running toward his fallen friend near the decontamination area. But wait! Before him is a large, round, compound door, just up ahead and down the hall, outlined with caution stripes, and labeled Emergency Escape Tunnel. Although barred by fire, it's just beyond Laboratory A, and in his heart, he knows it's his only hope. As he reaches the junction of the decontamination room, he looks left, hearing the shuffling sound of bodies moving toward him, things he once thought were dead. In a pinch of desperation, he drops down, grabbing Danao's rifle, then opens fire. Ah! He howls fiercely as he mows them down to the ground. In the heat of the moment, he glances back at the wasp-like beast, shredding the girl. It stabs her in the chest with the spine from its wrist, and as she falls dead, her human-like color fades to a dried, leafy brown. The beast then turns toward him. No! No! Clater shouts, his heart pounding as he backs away fearfully, though unobservantly tripping over the roots that entangle his legs. In a panic, he discharges his weapon in the fall. Ah!